Good morning and welcome to the first joint Republican media availability of the 2022 legislative session. Thank you for joining us. I'm Kim Wirtz, Communications Director for the Senate Republicans. I'm joined today by Senate Republican Leader John Braun from the 20th District, House Republican Leader J.T. Wilcox from the 2nd District, Senate Republican Caucus Chair Judy Warnick from the 13th District, House Republican Floor Leader Jacqueline Maycumber from the 7th District, and Senator Chris Gildon, Senate Republican Deputy Floor Leader from the 25th District. And after that introduction, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Senator Braun for opening comments.
Well, thank you, Kim. First of all, welcome everybody. Thanks for being here on the second day of session. I suspect others like me are still adjusting, getting their heads around all the things going on. We have a busy schedule already in day two, and I've talked to many of you before. I mean, the Senate Republicans are focused on the effort to restore public safety around our state and undo some of the things that we got wrong during last session, we the legislature, to return affordability to our communities around the state. You know, we're just buying food or gas or housing or heating your house has become difficult for many. We need to do things within our state to drive those costs down and make it affordable to live here in Washington. And frankly, the last thing we need to do is work very hard on rebuilding trust with our communities around the state. After almost 2 years in a declared emergency, we've lost trust in many cases with at both the state level and the local level, and we need to do that. And one of the first things to do that is to fix our emergency powers law so it's a balance between all the branches of government. So that's our focus this year. I'm not going to go into the details until we get into the questions as asked. The last thing I wanted to do is simply, for those of you who have not heard, announce that thankfully, after unfortunate 1 week delay, the Whatcom County Council has nominated or appointed rather a replacement for Doug Erickson. So Simon Sefcik has been sworn in as our new state senator from the 42nd Legislative District, and we look forward to welcoming him to Olympia and getting him off to a great start to represent the good people of the 42nd Legislative District. And I'll stop there and turn it over to Representative Wilcox. You're muted, JT.
I kept myself from using a bad word when I realized that I was muted. First of all, thanks, John. Thanks to all of you. Normally we talk about how long it's been since we've seen you, but we've seen almost all of you quite a bit in the last week or so. I'm glad to be back doing our job legislating. Because of the unusual circumstances that we've had, where the governor has been filling the role in many ways of the legislature for for over 700 days now, or almost 700 days, we have been beset, as you might have been too, with thousands and thousands of demands that we start acting as a normal government with 3 different branches, and I'm glad to be here and doing that. Another thing that I'm glad about is it seems like we've got 2 issues where we not only have bipartisan agreement, we have 5 corners agreement, and that is that we take a look at some of the disastrous bills from the last couple of years and work on fixes for those. I heard the governor mention the long-term care tax. All Democratic caucus leaders, as well as John and I, have mentioned this many times. And I have high hopes that there's an appetite out there, not to restart the same failed approach that we have right now, and where all of the fixes will actually make it even less sustainable, but an opportunity to look at the free market, make it voluntary and affordable, and that is embodied in the bill. I think it's 1772 that Representative Drew Stokesbury dropped earlier this week. And we also, I think, have 5-corner agreement that it's time to take a look at the public safety bills that went way too far to achieve balance. I was happy to hear the speaker earlier this week use the word balance several times. That's what we need, balance. And we also need to have majorities and a governor that listens to the press, listens to the populace and listens to the minority party. Fundamentally, we're all here to keep them who are in charge from making mistakes. And when they don't listen, they make mistakes. The governor returned to his usual theme. I think we've heard parts of this speech for about 10 years now. That doesn't mean that there aren't important elements to it. All of us live in the environment. Republicans represent people that work in the environment and often live in our districts because they love their connection to the environment. And when the governor talks about doing big things, as did the speaker, I would like to commend to all of you Representative Mary Dye and her transformational proposals to take those resources from the Climate Commitment Act and put them towards goals that are actually achievable and accelerate progress so that we have a clean Puget Sound, so that we have clean rivers, so that we quickly open up the thousands of miles of habitat that are available for salmon if we would only do our job and eliminate fish passage barriers. And we have the dollars available to do that. We should absolutely be doing that. And I'd look forward to the governor seriously considering her proposals and understanding that they might be a better way of accomplishing many of the things that he's talking about. And then we can check those things off, quit using them for politics, and move on to the next things that we need to accomplish. Sorry, that's the end of my speech. John, do we want to hand it off to Judy and Jacqueline?
Yeah, I think so. That's so Judy, if you want to make a few comments.
Sure, thank you, Senator Brown. And I am very glad to be part of this astute organization here, the leadership of both the House and the Senate minority caucuses. Very glad to be part of this. And I am thankful that we now have a full slate of senators in the Senate Republican caucus, as was announced by Senator Brown. I am one of the senators that is not in Olympia, kind of doing a self-imposed quarantine because I was exposed at the end of last week. Thankfully, I'm fine. I'm not experiencing any illness at all. So looking forward to being in Olympia in person. I want to congratulate Senator Gildon for the excellent response that he gave to the governor's State of the State address. He hit on the fact that our caucuses are very diverse. Our opinions are shaped by that diversity of our caucuses, and our opinions are shaped by listening to people. And I'm not sure that's happening after listening to the governor's speech earlier. So I just am glad to be part of this and would be glad to answer any questions that anyone might have, but I'm going to turn it over to Representative Maycumber now.
Well, you notice the beginning of our priorities are all fixes from last year. And I think Senator Warnick just mentioned that when you don't listen to the minority party and you have partisan legislation, that you have to come back from a fix. The people of the state of Washington are angry about long-term care, and they showed that with their votes. They're angry that this bill came up, and it's been a couple of years. This bill could have been fixed with amendments on the House floor that Republicans suggested, and they were not accepted. And now we have to come back, and it has to be one of the first things we do. And that's what happens when you don't listen to other people, other legislators that represent people across the state of Washington. And people want to be safe. People want to be able to pay their bills, buy their food, pay for their gas, and be safe in their communities. And now we have to look at those policing bills, which once again, as House Republicans, we mentioned that these will not work, that these will cause problems, and they have. And so now one of our first priorities are making sure that our families are safe in their homes and safe in their communities. So those will be the priorities in the state of Washington. So hopefully as a legislature, we will listen to everybody throughout the state, no matter where you live and where you represent.
And Chris, we aren't forgetting you. If you'd like to make a couple comments, I'd appreciate it.
Well, no, thank you, everyone. I appreciate your comments. You've all said it very well, and I've had my chance to say my comments during my speech, but I think there's certain things that we need to get after real fast during this emergency session. And one of them is the long-term care tax. It's already been being started. We need to take action to repeal that immediately first week of session, just to give clarity to everyone across Washington state. We've got to take early action to fix those police reform bills so that we can institute true law and justice throughout our state. We need to take matters to implement reasonable emergency powers reform. And once we get all of that done, we can use the rest of session to talk about things like, okay, how do we fix the long-term care tax if we want to continue on with it? And then we can start looking at other items, budgetary items, such as providing Washingtonians with some tax relief, given that we have $10 billion surplus this year. So there's where we are.
I think we've gotten each of the members a chance to speak. So we're going to turn it back to Kim to mediate the questions from the media.
Thank you, Senator Braun. We'll start with Rachel LaCourte from the AP. Go ahead, Rachel.
Hi, good afternoon. We know where you all differ from the governor and the majority on some of their priorities, but can you talk a bit about whether there were any areas of the governor's speech that you agreed with? For example, the area around education and allocating money toward helping with learning loss and other social supports that students may need after 2 years with the pandemic.
I can start. I have 3 kids in public school, and I am, frustrated, trying to make sure they continue their education. I feel like they're lagging behind. We had schools that stopped for over a year. We had schools that never stopped. And we're all in pretty much a crisis mode here. And we should be focusing on education. I think we can all agree that we need to focus on education. And I will commend the governor on keeping the schools open right now and making sure our kids continue to have that healthy interaction, have that continuous education. And we really need to make sure that we fill those gaps right now. I think we need to make sure when our kids graduate high school that they have a place to go, a career, they have training, they have understanding, and we don't lose a whole generation of students during this crisis. This is very important, and this is, heavy on my heart. Like I said, 3 kids in the public school system, and every day we're just trying to make sure they don't slip further and further behind. And my children did, pretty much miss a year of education when some students did not. I'm very concerned for their future.
Yeah, I'd echo what Jacqueline said. The governor kind of, came alongside us last year as we pushed to get kids back in school, and actually, to his credit, pushed to get kids back in school, and we appreciate that. It's still a fight not done yet. We have a lot of recovery to do. The other thing I'd point out is, if I heard the governor correctly early in his speech, he gave all of Washingtonians credit for the success in COVID, and that's somewhat different than some of his previous statements where he claimed credit for himself or state government. And I agree with him that the reason we're where we are today is because folks across the state of Washington have done a good job, been broadly responsible and thoughtful in how they deal with COVID and public safety issues, and we should trust them. And I think that the governor's comments this morning were very welcome in that regard, that we recognize we're in this together and everybody's doing their best, and we should trust each other to take care of ourselves, our families, our communities, our coworkers, to keep us safe as we hopefully weather we all hope, I guess, the end of this pandemic.
Rachel, did you have a follow-up question?
I guess I just wanted to see if you foresee any sort of disagreement from your caucuses on the amount of money that the governor is proposing putting into education, and whether you agree that schools should have more counselors or more school nurses and other resources available to students. And do you foresee that being maybe an area where there's bipartisanship?
Yeah, well, I think that. Go ahead, JT.
No, I was going to defer to John on the budget. He's always the one with all that detail in his head. But I do want to reflect a little bit on what you said. Behind everything that we need to do, whether it's in government or in the private sector right now, and especially on something like that where the governor is specifically talking about adding personnel, we're not filling the jobs that are available now. And in some cases, that's because the The workforce has shrunk. A lot of people have retired early. Other people have changed careers, or, we're dealing with lots of sick outs. And I mean legitimate sick outs. I'm not disparaging that at all. And I feel like one of the things that happens in politics, and I think is honestly a concern with this governor, is everything is at the very highest level. And we're talking about how many dollars to put in. Executing on the plan is absolutely critical. And we have to get the schools functioning first. We have to have school teachers in the classroom. We have to get the kids used to coming again. We have to have the systems that already exist be functional, or we're just going to create more chaos. And I'm not against adding, especially counselors. And I think under current circumstances, nurses make sense as well. But all they're going to be doing is filling the holes that are there because there's not enough staff in the school right now. And I'm not just expounding here based on rumor. A lot of you know my wife is a middle school teacher. She retired at the end of last year, and she's back subbing 3 or 4 days a week. And this is just a critical thing. It's not just having kids in school. It's having schools that are functioning correctly. That requires a little bit of stability. It requires a set of rules that don't change all the time. And I think I really want to create as much stability in schools as possible. And I might be less anxious for rapid change than others are.
Yeah, and I would just answer from a budget perspective. Look, we're the ones that drove the percentage of the budget over 50% going to K-12 public education for the first time in 30 years when we were last in the majority. And we've seen it fall away from there. We're not afraid to invest in education. I think the issue is going to be, how do you invest and how do you make sure it gets real results? And that has to do with perhaps some restrictions on use of language. You talked about school counselors. We fund school counselors now through the protocol school model, but there's no language to make sure we actually get counselors in the school and that they're actually effective. So I think it's going to be, the willingness to invest the money, absolutely, but we're going to want to make sure we have some ability to make sure it actually happens, that there's some restrictions on how the money is used. And then frankly, as JT said, a lot of this is about execution and how do we support execution at both the state and the local level.
Okay, and after that, we'll go to Hannah Scott with Cairo Radio. Go ahead, Hannah.
I'm here. Sorry, couldn't unmute myself. Thank you, everybody. I had a question. Toward the end of his comments in the State of the State today, Governor Inslee urged all lawmakers to forcefully speak out against this big lie on the fraudulent 2020 election claims. Wondering if any of you intend to do so that haven't already, or do it again if you already have. And he keeps kind of suggesting this idea about criminalizing politicians who lie, a possible bill. I've not seen one. Is there any appetite for anything like that? And I'd love to hear from all of you.
Well, I guess I'll jump in since JT went first last time. Look, I think both myself and JT have been very clear on our trust in the election system in the state of Washington. It is a human system, and I think we all recognize that human systems can have faults, and whenever we find them, we should go after them. But there's no evidence that there was broad election fraud in our state. I can't speak to other states. I don't live in other states, but I think we've been very clear, for some time now on this issue, and we'll continue to be clear. As far as the governor's suggestion that there be a bill that makes lying a misdemeanor, I think it should be clear that lying's a bad idea. We should not do that. We should just tell the truth. And it's not clear to me you can legislate that, frankly. And actually, if I understand correctly, the legislature tried to do that back in 1999. The U.S. State Supreme Court ruled it a violation of the First Amendment. So I'm not sure, constitutionally you can do that. But don't get me wrong, I think we should tell the truth, and I've done my best to do so. I believe everybody on this call, all the members on this call have done the same. And we'll continue to do the same.
Thank you, John. Well, I think John and I have been very plain. We believe in elections, and I believe in elections so much that I think that if politicians are caught lying, elections are the right way to deal with them. I've seen, I think, quite a bit of skepticism on the part of the press about this idea of criminalizing political speech. I've seen a ton of people come up with examples all over the place of very prominent people who have questioned elections in the past. I think unless you have specific evidence, that's not a very smart thing to do. But people of every party seem to have fallen into that. And, you know, this is a trap of being a politician. You think that you can fix everything by passing a law. Things aren't that easy to fix. In my mind, if you really want to make a lasting impression on people, be the best possible example that you can. And we should all aspire to that.
And we've done some research, my office has anyway. I've had a lot of constituents ask, were the elections in the state of Washington fixed? Were they safe? Were they true? We've done a lot of research, and I believe the state of Washington has one of the best systems, election systems in the country. And thanks to former Secretary of State, Kim Wyman. And now she's gone on to work for the Biden administration. So I think we can be assured that things are going to get better on a national level as well. But as far as what has happened in our state, I think we've had good and fair elections. The lying, there's a set of 10 commandments that purposely talks about lying. And so I don't think we need another law to outlaw lying.
I get a lot of calls and emails, you know, throughout the year from concerned constituents on a multitude of different issues. And I have never received an email or a call asking to criminalize speech. I've looked, you know, I have yet to receive it, but I do get a lot of emails regarding paying for their food, kids' food, families' food, getting gas, concerns about employment securities, losing their unemployment, still having to pay back fraud that they didn't commit, issues regarding homelessness and paying for the rent. I've received many, many emails on those issues and concerns about their safety of their children walking to school. So those are the issues that I receive in my office right now that the legislature should be working on.
Hannah, do you have a follow-up question?
I do. And again, this would be for everyone. I don't want to take up everyone's time, but I've heard both Republicans and Democrats describing the appetite for balance in this session. And I'm wondering whether all of you have a sense yet on day two of whether that word means the same thing to both Democrats and Republicans.
Well, go ahead, JT, because I think the speaker is the one that use it the most. So this is in your court.
Well, at this point, it's in the category of political speech, and I've got no idea exactly what it means. But we may find out soon enough. So let's see what happens in a few committees. See what bills come up, see what amendments are passed, and if it's just the same old, you know, party line votes, then probably we're not seeing balance.
Then we'll just have to come back and fix them the next year if we see them on party line votes. That is my concern. Listening to the legislators from all across the state of Washington actually produces better legislation.
And just my own anecdotal story, I've had more members from the majority party reach out to me this year with pre-filed bills. Are you interested in this? Can we work together on this? So maybe it'll work. Maybe it'll work, that balance question, but we'll see.
Okay, and we'll move on to Jeff Pagella from Como. Go ahead, Jeff. Are you still with us? There we go.
I had to figure out how to unmute myself. Yeah, with Jeff Pogela with Como and soon to be KNWN as we're getting our call letters changed. I'm sure you guys saw. I guess following on Hannah's question about this push of people not believing in the legitimacy of the election, there are, particularly for Leader Wilcox, there are members of your own caucus that have been pushing this. how do you handle that? How do you respond to them? Is there any internal discipline for them pushing that? I mean, how do you deal with that as a leader of your caucus?
Well, if I talked about it, it wouldn't be internal anymore. But caucuses have discipline, and you've heard me many times, without exception, stand up for the process in Washington. That's my opinion. You've probably heard many of my caucus members express themselves, and inside a caucus room, there's plenty of discussion as well. I think that we don't really want to get into a place where there are these forbidden topics and you will be canceled if you talk to those. I said a few minutes ago that I believe in elections so much that elections are the way that we should deal with people's evaluation of the credibility of politicians. And that's up to the people of Washington to decide.
Jeff, did you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, quick follow-up. I know Jacqueline Maycomer said you were hearing about all sorts of things from your constituents, and I guess this would be to you or anyone else on the panel. What do you say to those constituents who still believe not only the federal election, but the Washington state election was false? How do you respond to the constituents that contact you about that?
Jeff, which year, 2016 or 2020? I think there's people on both sides that have questions, and we need to allow those people to have their questions.
I can jump in for just a little bit here, if it's okay. In my typical response whenever I get this is, I say, look, we have a really good election system in Washington state. We have done we've done audits in each and every county of the state after the election, and none of those audits have shown irregularities. We've done a full hand recount in the 5th legislative district this last year with Senator Mark Mullet, and I think the results changed less than about 5 votes. According to all of the data, our election system is safe, it's effective. Now, can we do better? Can we seek to improve? Yes, we can always seek to improve, and we should always tighten up any of those areas that are not quite perfect. We should seek perfection. We're not there yet, but I think overall our system is very good. And if someone is going to bring claims of election fraud or widespread election fraud, they need to produce the evidence along with it. Otherwise, it's just irresponsible accusations.
Okay. And I will go to Joseph O'Sullivan with the Seattle Times. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, I've got 2 questions for Representative Wilcox. First, just to continue on this theme for a moment, what do you think about the use of 3 lawmakers using taxpayer funds to go to this election symposium? Number 1. And number 2, you made it pretty clear yesterday in your response to Speaker Jenkins in your remarks that you want to see Republican proposals on law cares and emergency powers heard. I'm curious if you've gotten any commitments or assurances by House Democrats by this point.
No, I haven't got any response on that. And there's a natural response to this. We will offer motions in committee if they don't get hearings, asking for immediate consideration. Every single person on the committee will have to vote on that. If there's no response at the committee level, and we're doing this because the speaker made a point last year about, these had not gone through the committee structure. So I don't want that to be an objection this time. And then we'll do the same thing on the floor. And so at the very least, everyone will have the opportunity to stand up and say, I think we should consider this bill. And they won't be able to say, there was no concern for the correct process. I guess I also took a little bit of hope from the speaker at the end of her speech, and also at the last press event that she and I did together, when she said that there was a lot of common ground. And as you said before, or as some of you have noted in the past, I think 7 of those members of the House Democratic Caucus had publicly said that they favored reforms to the governor's emergency powers. And again, these are not partisan things. These are the things that I would want to have in place for a Republican governor as well. Now, going back to the other question, although I probably could have dodged it, you know, you start drawing lines about, you know, things besides, is there a legislative nexus? You know, who then draws those lines? Whatever the unpopular topic of the day would be excluded for everybody. And, you know, that isn't the way to do open government. The way to do open government is to expose everybody's ideas. And if they work, then support them. If they don't, then they deserve all the criticism in the world. And we've all expressed ourselves, I think, very clearly about this question.
Joe, did you have a follow-up?
No, I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, next we'll go to Drew Mickelson with King 5. Go ahead, Drew.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for making time for us again here today. Senator Gilden listed 4 areas where your party would like to see tax relief. None of those topics came up in the governor's address today. Is there any hope for tax relief in the 2022 session, in your opinions?
Well, we haven't heard much reason for hope so far, both either from the comments from the leader in the Senate or the speaker or from the governor. But here's the facts, and we have a $60 billion very robust budget. We have, depends on how you count the money, somewhere between $10 and $12 billion, 4-year number, surplus beyond that. We believe that would sure be a good thing for the people of the state of Washington to send some of that back to them. We've heard over and over, you know, Jacqueline has mentioned a couple of times, and certainly all of us have heard from our constituents that it's getting harder and harder to afford to live in the state of Washington, whether it's food or gas or housing or energy to heat your housing. It's all going up faster than wages are going up. So we have an opportunity to send money back to the people of the state of Washington. And maybe or maybe not you've seen this, but New York just proposed a significant tax reduction. Certainly if New York State can reduce their taxes, Washington State ought to be able to.
I'm going to jump in there. I think if we cannot do something for the manufacturers, the job creators in the state of Washington, then we're failing not only those businesses, but failing those people who work for them. Because we had a plan in place until several years ago, and it was vetoed. So I think we need to go back and strongly review the B&O tax for manufacturers.
You know, we haven't talked about, we talk in billions and billions and billions and billions, but we don't talk about the people who are going to struggle to pay their property taxes to stay in their home, the people who lost their job during COVID, during the lockdowns, and still haven't found another one, or their job has changed because the industry has been lost. I live in a rural area where every job is precious, and you know, we talk about school shoes, basketball shoes, making sure our kids can even play sports, paying for the gas to get there. There's parts of the state of Washington that, you know, is almost in crisis still, that hasn't recovered, that's still looking for their jobs to feed their families, to stay in their homes every day. And that's the conversation we should be having. How do we make sure that we have houses available? How do we make sure that we have places for people? How do we make sure that there is a job to go to? And, you know, we have a surplus because we're paying more in taxes, and that's important, but it's very important that we talk about who's paying those taxes and are they able to put food on the table at the end of the day.
Drew, did you have a follow-up question?
At this time, thank you all.
Okay. And it looks like our last question today goes to Laurel Demkovich from the Spokesman. Go ahead, Laurel.
Thanks, Kim. I have 2 quick questions on some specific policies. Not sure if any of you has had a chance to look at them, but figured it's worth a try. The first, so there are 2 anti-hazing proposals that would implement hazing prevention programs at colleges and increase some penalties for hazing. Have any of you seen those, and what are some of your thoughts on that?
That is a very specific question, and I have not seen those bills yet.
Okay, I will try my second specific question. there is another bill that would allow legislative staff to unionize, and there seems to be a lot of co-sponsors on that, but I'm curious if that's something folks in your caucuses might support, and just your thoughts on that.
You know, this has been a topic of conversation at some level for a few years, and I've got no idea how members feel about it. You kind of have to caucus on things to figure that part out. I feel like our staff is pretty happy, but you know, we will see where this bill goes, and everyone will be fully informed and have an opinion then.
Laurel, I know your first question didn't have an answer. Was there another follow-up you had?
No, that's it. Thanks.
Okay, well then, Senator Braun or Representative Wilcox, did you have final comments to wrap everything up today?
No, JT, go ahead.
No, I think I had plenty of opportunities to speak today. Thanks everybody for offering those.
Yeah. No, again, thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Kim, I did see Austin had a question, but he didn't ask one. So Austin,
he had to jump off.
Okay, got it. All right. Well, again, thank you everyone for being here. It's only day 2, so still a lot of work to do. I look forward to working with you and alongside you over the next 58 days. Have a good day.
Thank you.
See you next time, everybody. Thank you.